It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. Our guest today, Daniel Hopsicker. He's been a guest on this show at least 5 or 6 times. Who knows? It's each time has been a blessing to me. You can find Daniel Hopsicker on Twitter at Daniel Hopsicker. His website is madcowprod.com. Incredible work over there. Books, Barry and the Boys, The CIA, The Mob, and America's Secret History, Conspiracy, The Secret History, Masters of the Universe. Well, that's not yours. Wait a minute. Wait, what is it? Welcome to the Terror Land, Mohammad Atta, and the 9/11 cover-up in Florida, Barry Seal, Only in America. Mr. Daniel Hopsicker, are you there?
Rock and roll.
Okay, look at you. Sound like a new man. Oh, boy.
How are you?
I told you off the air. I'm having a kind of a rough couple of weeks here, but before we get into all of this, can you remind the audience who Daniel Hopsicker is?
Oh, nobody special. I'm a writer, producer. Used to do a business show that aired on NBC internationally way back when, and in about 1999 or 98. Having not been political for 30 years, I got a little angry when I saw what they did to Gary Webb, who was a reporter in San Jose at the San Jose Mercury News.
Gary Webb, who wrote a series called Dark Alliance in the 90s, proving that the Contras had been selling cocaine to fund their little war down there, and the CIA had let them, which was only the 5,000th indicator in a row that the CIA, sold drugs to fund whatever they felt was useful. And the sad part about the Gary Webb story was they didn't bother with just shutting his series down. They went after him personally. Mm. So he got run out of news. He got run out of his industry. Couldn't get another job. He slowly lost everything he had. He lost his house, lost his family, lost his wife. And on the night he shot himself, they were coming the next day to confiscate the only thing he had left that he cared about, which is his motorcycle. So he shot himself. He shot himself twice. I guess he missed the first time. No, he didn't miss. He just didn't finish it. So he was serious. He was serious. And I don't know how you feel about the hereafter, Ed. I have thoughts about it myself. But you kill yourself like that, you have to feel like in your last moments that you're pretty much a loser. And he wasn't a loser. He became a hero to a lot of people, thousands of people, to anyone that watched while he went down.
And by the way, too, the double gunshot suicides, it's not all that uncommon. I think it's about 4%. And you're right that's commitment. A lot of people after the first shot, if it's survive the first shot, they want to live. But
yeah,
there are double shot suicides. People think it's impossible.
It depends on what you know, Ed. Okay. When Mike Rupert killed himself, well, I knew that was serious. That was suicide. Because he'd been kind of out to lunch for a while. Does that make sense?
Who's that, Mike Gruber?
Remember Mike?
No, I don't.
You don't remember Mike Rupert?
Oh, Mike Rupert. Mike Rupert. Yes, I do. Mike Rupert. Yeah. I heard that story as well, too. Yeah, former cop.
Never ascribe to conspiracy that which can be explained as mere stupidity. You know, we do a lot of dumb things, don't we?
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah. But now, Daniel, what about yourself, though, man? You've also come under a lot of opposition. I know you had a couple of lawsuits that were devastating to you.
No, nothing. You know, what happens is that when you get into doing what I did,
Yeah.
It comes with the territory. Think about it. It's kind of if they only sue you, that's pretty much a backhand compliment, isn't it? I mean, we live in a world where journalists regularly go missing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't here. And isn't that wonderful? I mean, that is probably Exhibit A in God Bless America. Okay, they don't have to shoot you here; they can just sort of freeze you out, and that accomplishes the same thing.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
They
they can bankrupt you, ostracize you, and destroy your life in so many ways.
You betcha. So I got sued 4 times. I lost 4 times, which is because when you get sued, basically, if the other guy's got more money than you do,
yeah,
you're going to lose. And none of the lawsuits were particularly, personally vicious. I mean, it was one of the guys that sued me, and he'll remain mentionless because he's still alive and he's still around Vegas, I believe. Followed me into the men's room after the judge had ruled in his favor. Followed me into the men's room and got up alongside me. And he said, "You know why I'm doing this, don't you?" And I said, "No. I don't know why." Well, it turned out he was doing it because his wife was reopening their 10-year-old divorce to see if she could squeeze a little more from him, and was alleging that that as a result of interviews she gave me, or he gave me rather, that he had a lot more money than he had copped to when they got divorced. Does that make sense?
Yes, I guess you were like collateral damage.
Exactly. And he was an interesting kind of character. He was there the day Kennedy got killed. He was working for Carlos Marcello, and Marcello was acquitted the same day Kennedy was killed. I forget what Marcello was acquitted of. Probably doesn't matter now. So he was I don't know. I don't use gangland phrasing because I don't qualify, and you don't want to sound like some stupid wannabe. He was a button for Carlos Marcello. He did business. He went down in 1974, sailed down to South America in a shrimp boat, doing what those shrimp boats do when they pull into port in Colombia.
Well, let me ask you this then, man, okay? Because you said, okay, fine, you're not going to use your old wise guy lingo. But what kind of background do you come up from? Because you do talk about smuggling, you talk about organized crime, you talk about politics, you talk about spooks. Where does Daniel Hopsicker come out of that he has this?
Dude, I'm just a former Catholic boy from the Midwest. Actually, my stories are mildly interesting. So I'll give you the short story of it. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, with all of the ordinariness that entails. Okay. And when I was 14 years old, the best thing that ever happened to me. My dad, who was chemical company executive with the whole 9 yards, with the little handkerchiefs with his initials on the pocket.
Yeah.
HJ8. He was a chemical company executive, and they transferred him to his company's San Francisco office. And it was 1967. So I got out there and looked around and said, "Well, what do you think I should take first?" And next thing you know, I was deep into the San Francisco Bay Area during People's Park, almost quite literally. Okay, imagine. I don't know where you grew up, Ed. Or how, but probably more ordinary, more like my upbringing than not. After having spent 8 years of grade school and 2 years of Catholic high school, right, being taught by nuns and priests, among others, but still, all of a sudden I found myself in a situation where, early in my junior year, I went to this great high school in Walnut Creek, which was outside of Berkeley. So I'm there, and you know how kids are. If you're new in town, you tend to hang out with other people who are new in town because you've got the cooties anyway. So I had some buddies who also were new, and we decided that what we were going to do was ditch school that day. It was a beautiful day in the Bay Area, and go into Berkeley because People's Park was going on, and it was big in the headlines. So so we drive into Berkeley. I don't remember as much about that trip as I should. I do remember riding around in the back of a half-ton pickup truck, a big, probably bigger than that, big, with a pickaxe in my hand. And every once in a while the truck would stop, and we would jump out and cut round holes in the street, in the middle of the street, in the middle of the boulevard, and plant trees. Ever heard anything more ridiculous in your life?
I never knew that Daniel Hopsicker was a hippie. Was a hippie beatnik type.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Then, horror of horrors, something really horrible happened. We got tear gassed. And the interesting thing about getting tear gas is if you're 15 and a half years old, your first thought is, "Oh my God, Mom's going to find out."
That's right.
Because it smells. It's all over your clothes. And so the icy fingers of fear, curl around your little adolescent heart. And we're staring at each other, in stupefaction. And somebody said, "Hey, don't worry. I've got Mrs. So-and-so as a teacher in fourth period. She's really cool. She lives here." I mean, who thought there'd ever be anyone that, a high school teacher that lived in Berkeley? So we called her, and she invited us over. There were like, I don't know, 4 or 5 of us, washed our clothes.
Man, the world was so different back then,
Oh, man.
What a different world.
I swear to God, washed our clothes, so when we got home, we were fine. And that was such an incredibly powerful moment that I've always remembered it. And it happened early in my junior year of high school, right outside San Francisco, California, kind of like in the fall of love. You heard about the fall of love? I haven't either. It was the summer of love.
Yeah.
But that fall we went to People's Park and we got tear gassed. And a kindly teacher took pity on us and saved us from our mother's wrath. Actually, it would have been our father's wrath by that time, I think. And that was like semi-serious back then. That was those were interesting times, weren't they?
Yeah. And then what were the first, the counterculture kind of Daniel Hopsicker, then what were how did you get into like the news business, covering that kind of stuff?
I didn't, man. I just got pissed off about Gary Webb.
What year was that?
And I started.
It was like in the 80s then.
Huh?
It was like in the 80s.
What? No, Gary Webb was 96.
Right. Okay.
I can't remember now how I started writing about it. Well, you know what? There's parts of my life that I just blank out because no particular reason. I had a business show that was airing internationally on NBC called Global Business 2000. Please don't look it up. Global Business 2000. And which was a lot of fun. I mean, I got to traipse around the earth profiling companies that had enough money to pay me, to do a little profile on them. So I got to go. I went to Budapest one time and saw what the Russian mob looked like, because they were all over the airport there, and you couldn't miss it, which was like kind of interesting. So I'm doing this business show called Global Business 2000, and I had this nifty idea to do a second half-hour show, to do a show called Conspiracy, which I've forgotten what the log line was, but it was Conspiracy with 3 stories, and the pilot was gonna. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, the pilot was gonna have 3 stories, and if you remember In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy,
I do.
We kind of patted ourselves on In Search Of because we weren't all that bright. And the middle story on In Search Of, true. The middle story on In Search Of was you could take half seriously, okay? It'd be crazy in the middle story. Well, what about that? So the middle story I chose to feature as a 15-minute segment on the pilot, half-hour pilot, was Barry Seal. Now, I don't know how much your audience knows about Barry Seal. Barry Seal was America's first famous, contemporarily famous, drug smuggler. Well known for daring do in the air, in the 80s. Barry Seal, and by choosing Barry Seal to profile, what I had done by accident was to focus on the main line, on what was the main line. I mean, all of this. Gary's story was about San Francisco, in the Contras selling cocaine in San Francisco, and what I focused on was Barry Seal, and Barry Seal focused right through, smuggled right through Florida and Louisiana, and I believe someone once said he smuggled 50 tons of cocaine into Mena, Arkansas. 50 tons is an awful lot, to define what you're doing with it, smuggling.
Not much sneaking going on, right? 50 tons.
Yeah. It's more like stash those boxes over here.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So Barry Seal was the main line, and the stuff I profiled included stuff no one had heard much about. So hold on here, it's half a second.
Okay. I was going to ask you. Yeah, let me ask you a quick question, because I know you lived with Barry Seal's widow. Is that when you hooked up? Yeah, is that when you hooked up with her?
Oh God, she was gorgeous. She was gorgeous, Barry Seal. I lived for 2 years with the widow of the biggest drug smuggler in American history, and just somehow got incredibly lucky, at least once or twice.
I always wondered, was that a romantic relationship, or was it the working relationship, or what was it?
Well, yes, it was.
It was both.
It was. It was romantic, yes. She had 3 kids. She had 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and the boys had almost literally seen their father assassinated in front of machine gun to death. Okay, which doesn't do a lot for your mental state when you're a 14-year-old boy. So they were troubled. They were troubled, and the whole family. I mean, it was the whole family. The whole family was troubled. I mean, no one ever thought Barry Seal would ever be assassinated. I mean, it'd be like I don't know, it'd be like killing a governor.
Like Bill Barr getting assassinated.
Bill Barr was in Barry Seal's story.
Yeah, I know.
Bill Barr was one of the spookiest elements in this whole thing was that a guy who had been there named Terry Reed, shout out to Terry, wrote a book about it back in 1991 or 92 called Compromise that had stuff in it that made you go, oh, come on. That can't be. I mean, the revelations were so shocking, there wasn't much you could do about it. And one of the revelations was that Bill Clinton was working in the late 80s for a drug smuggling operation through Arkansas that was helmed by then Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush. No kidding. You wouldn't think George Herbert Walker, the older Bush, the younger Bush, you'd know done cocaine, but Herbert Walker Bush, he did cocaine, or he didn't do cocaine. He oversaw the importation of tons and tons and tons of it.
Yeah, I interviewed that guy who wrote the book about Scarface Hotel, and he's talking about Jeb Bush with his big giant Escobar mustache hanging out at that nightclub over there with all those characters. The guys from Miami Vice, those kind of guys. The guys from Scarface. Right. And Jeb Bush is in there hanging out with him.
Right in the middle of, exactly. That's what happened. So there where it was.
Well, then, Daniel Hopsicker, what is it? That the biggest drug smugglers, the people with the biggest drug connections, they get to become president?
Thanks, Pat. Wonderful. Buddy of mine just stopped by, and I had to tell him to stop whispering because I couldn't barely remember my name by then. Anyway.
But I was going to ask you, so like the biggest drug smugglers, they get to become president? Is that how that works?
How it worked was described to me succinctly in one sentence by a bail bondsman in St. Tammany Parish in Louisiana. We went down to bail out her 2 sons because they'd gotten busted for doing something stupid. They were doing a lot of stupid things back then. They were like researching doing stupid things. And they got bailed out of jail by a short, squat bail bondsman named Butch, who apparently used to do something for Barry Seal, because when he found out I was writing a book about him, we were standing outside talking, waiting for the kids to get their stuff signed out so they could leave. When he told me in the Louisiana accent that I won't attempt to mimic because I can't do that right. But he had an accent. He told me, he said, what you need to know about Barry is Barry smuggled for the Democrats. Now, have you ever heard one line that described the drug trade quicker, faster, and more accurately than that? Barry smuggled for the Democrats. That's when you knew that drug smuggling was being done primarily by political parties that were vying for national power.
Yeah.
Right? And subsequent to that, I figured out what hopefully will live on after me, which is Danny's dictum, Danny's drug trafficking dictum. Okay, and it is this: that in every country on this gangster planet, where that has a significant illicit drug market, in which they're selling drugs like cocaine that seem to be pretty universally illegal. The people that run that market are the same people that run the country. Which, if you think about it for a minute, makes perfect sense. In a country run by more or less run by the CIA would be
right,
would be controlling the drug trade somehow, some way. And that is indeed what happens, and so it should come as no surprise, that's what happens here.
Daniel, what do you make then now of the legalizing of marijuana, of rec weed and medical weed? And it seems like a lot of these franchises, these lotteries, Russian oligarchs or have their hand in things. What do you make of the whole legalization and privatization, I guess you might call it?
You should know who controls the Florida drug trade, legal marijuana drug trade, are lawyers and lobbyists in Tallahassee.
Right.
So that's cool. They have nothing apparently against pot, as no one does. So you're buying pot from the Republican Party. Strange as it may seem. I'm sure a couple of those guys are friends with DeSantis.
Oh yeah,
Governor DeSantis.
Oh yeah, and Gates. Gates is the other one who was in there. And they wanted to make Lev Parnas, by the way, who I'm in touch with lately. Lev Parnas. They wanted to make him the nationwide marijuana czar.
Well, why not? One of the guys in this story was idling around that. Jeb Bush appointed him to a couple of state jobs, which he managed to steal a lot of money from, enough to get noticed. And he would have liked to have done that. Anyway, so that's how it goes. That's how it goes. And here I am, still here, and got cancer.
Yeah.
Got prostate cancer. Stopped treatment for prostate cancer because the treatment was I don't know if it was useful or not, but it made me feel like curling up and dying. It was just too strong. And I stopped treatment, and subsequently the cancer metastasized, and so here I am. With stage 4 cancer, supposedly. I fell and fractured my pelvis a year and a half ago, and life got interesting after that.
Yeah.
And painful. And so what I can tell your audience is that if you ever get sent to hospice, that's pretty cool. Because what they did the first thing when I got to hospice, the first week or week and a half I was there, was they managed the pain. And so I was no longer in pain on a daily basis. And boy, you can think a lot clearer when you're not in pain.
Yeah, it seems like you're letting loose a little bit, like on Twitter and stuff.
Well, sure. I don't know. You know what? I can tell you this, okay? Yeah. They've got really good drugs in hospice.
But
I mean, I take a measured hit of morphine in the morning, a measured hit of morphine at night. In between, if I want some Dilaudid, they're happy to pass on a couple, and I'm not in pain. I mean, I'm not bouncing around totally stoned either.
Yeah.
Because it's a measured dose, and It's enough to take away the pain. And that's a nice thing.
How long do you think you can maintain this?
Interesting question. I have really no idea. Anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
From 10 days. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
from 10 days to more than 5 years.
Okay.
More than 5. I heard from more than one medical professional. Now, first thing I did was I called a buddy of mine who's a doctor out in Torrance, California. A buddy who had experienced that whole Gary Webb thing, contemporaneously with me, and was a really cool guy. And I said, what's up, doc? I can't get a straight shot from the people here. And strangely enough, the doctors turn out to be human, and they don't want to keep bad news. So you've got stage 4 cancer, and probably you're going to die from it, but you don't know when, and they don't either. But what they've seen, this guy tells me, and then 3 nurses in hospice told me, are people who have lived past their diagnosis by 5 years.
Okay.
So who knows how long you can live with stage 4 cancer? I don't know.
But then let me ask you this, because you felt the need to write this story in a New York Minute, Everything Can Change. You felt the need to tell the world about your situation. Why was that? You felt the need to tell it now.
Because some idiot leaked it.
Oh, no, who's the idiot? Not me, I hope. Who's the idiot?
Oh, no, he's a nice guy, man. Okay. He's a guy with kind of a funny hippie name from like Arkansas.
Okay.
And and a good a well-meaning person. and after it leaked, when it leaked the first time, I just published a little note about it and turned it around backwards on my website so that no one could see it unless they actually clicked on it. And so that was okay. A couple dozen people found out. But then he sent out a broadcast email titled "Mad Cow is Dying," all in caps. And so it was something I was going to have to address.
Right.
Okay. And so I did. Sat down, thought, wrote up a few paragraphs worth of thoughts. Figured one of them wasn't nice to make somebody laugh, and published it on the website. It's not a 5-star headline. I've got a fatal disease potential. Likely I will die of metastatic prostate cancer sometime between now and 5+ years, and I won't be able to tell when until apparently just slightly beforehand. Well, I'm just not sure quite how that works. But what I do know about it is having spent 2 weeks in hospice before they released me to the general population, I know that the wonderful thing is that because of hospice, nobody has to die in pain. And that wasn't that a cool revelation? It was.
And all of us, we're only guaranteed our last breath that we've just taken. No one's guaranteed. No one is obviously we not all have diagnoses, but we're only promised that last breath we take. But now looking back on your life, do you and the path you've chosen, exposing. Go ahead.
Looking back on your life, okay. This is like the first posthumous interview. Okay. All right. I work with Daniel Hopsicker, who passed away 3 weeks ago.
Looking back on your life, though, come on, there's an opportunity. Looking back on your life, okay, as I look back on my life, do you regret taking?
Looking back on my life, I've had a terrific frigging time.
Yeah.
Okay. I lived my life. I didn't live anyone else's. And it was like an exceptionally interesting life because I was in California, from the late 60s through the early 2000s. And I can't think of any place that I'd rather have been. Some really interesting stuff went on, and including people I knew around the edges. Like Timothy Leary. I got to meet Timothy Leary. How cool was that? It was a social revolution. It wasn't a violent revolution, but it was in some ways better than a violent revolution because it was only intermittently violent. All right, it could be violent if they decided that things weren't going well without a little of the old ultra violence, but it was fun. And it was revelatory. I got to find stuff out, dude.
Yeah.
Okay. When I got into this, I decided I had it in me to have some idea of what was going on while I was alive before I died. And damn if I didn't come close. True story.
Out of all the stories you broke, which one are you the most proud of that you'd like people to know about?
You know what? Any of 100. When I found out that the big, I was talking to an Arkansas state cop who got anthraxed around the Mina. He was a state investigator that found out what was going on in Mina. And he wouldn't shut up about it, so they gave him anthrax. And he likes to die, as they say in that part of the country. And he described it succinctly as one might who had been almost murdered by anthrax. He said, what happens when you find out that the biggest drug smuggler in the country is the country? Which pretty much sums it up, don't you think?
Yeah, interesting, too, that the method would be anthrax, which also popped up around 9/11 with the same cast of characters, Mena, Arkansas smugglers, and some of the folks in power, at least, in positions at 9/11.
Yeah, exactly. And because what I researched. Okay, want to know what I'm proudest about?
Yeah.
Is I discovered that Barry Seal, who in the early 80s became the biggest drug smuggler, contemporaneous drug smuggler, most famous drug smuggler in American history, had flown a getaway plane after the Kennedy assassination. Let that one, slap you in the face for a minute. True story.
Now, who'd you hear that from?
Oh God. Well, that was when I discovered the true definition of an open secret. Because in New Orleans, his participation in the assassination was what's known as an open secret. So one time I found myself, after, I guess this was after I finished the book before it came out, having dinner with a unsuccessful candidate for city council in New Orleans, a Republican, because they lost, and because she was smart. Okay, she was a smart lady, and in New Orleans, in Louisiana, by law, you are allowed to examine the election machines 2 days after the election. They're all in a big warehouse, and you get to go in and play around with it if you want. And she went in and she brought a cameraman with her. Apparently she'd seen something like this happen before. and she pretended to vote for herself. Her name was Jambaluka. I vote for Jambaluka. It comes out Rothstein. Vote for Jambaluka, comes out Rothstein. Okay, so she voted for herself half a dozen times, and each time she voted, the machine said she voted for the other guy, the other candidate, which is kind of proof of election finagling. And we were having dinner. Let me finish this, because I am a wordy son of a bitch. We were having dinner with her biggest backer, who was an Italian restaurateur in New Orleans, who owned one of the most famous restaurants in New Orleans, okay? Kind of a slick mob guy in his late 50s. And at a certain point during the conversation, I alluded to the fact that after a year of digging diligently, I discovered that Barry Seal had flown a getaway plane out of Redbird Airfield outside of Dallas the day of the assassination. And he looked at me and he shrugged, and he was like less than impressed with the revelation, because it was something he'd known for 30 years or 40 years. And that's what an open secret is. An open secret is something that's it's known to everyone within a certain circle. It's an open secret. So if you were connected to the mob in New Orleans in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, you knew that Barry Seal had something to do with the Kennedy assassination.
So Seal didn't have enough insurance to prevent his murder?
Truly, I end up here with an enormous amount of respect for Barry Seal, who spit in the face of destiny, and hastened his own death. He went up against George Herbert Walker Bush. He said he threw down the gauntlet. He had with him at all times incriminating evidence implicating the two Bush boys in drug trafficking, like Jeb Bush loading drugs onto planes, and George standing next to him, which that's enough to get you killed, and it got him killed for sure, and then all the evidence went missing, and if you didn't know that evidence went missing, when the FBI got involved in something like 10 minutes after it happened, you weren't paying attention. So he could have known that the evidence he thought was going to prevent him from being assassinated was going to be immediately confiscated. No one would ever hear about it again, but he did not, and he paid the price. So here's the Barry who went up against the mob as just a regular guy in New Orleans, Louisiana, in 1986. End of story.
You were pretty infuriated by that Tom Cruise movie, right?
God, it wasn't meaningful enough to get excited about. It's just evidence that nobody was ever going to pay for what I knew. Okay. And there you go. How they made that was the director, who could remain nameless, but since I have prostate cancer, I really don't give a shit. And the star spent a week hooked, involved in a homosexual tryst in exclusive hotel somewhere and said, screw this Barry Seal story. We can come up with something more exciting. And thought they did. And yet had not. And isn't that a surprise that Tom Cruise and a typical Hollywood director were not as smart as what had happened in real life. And so that's what happened.
And where'd you hear that story from?
Why would I tell you?
You can't tell me.
Why would I want to tell you? It happened.
Gotcha.
Okay, it happened. I mean, a movie like that movie could have been great, man.
Yeah.
Barry Seal story.
What you think of the one with Dennis Hopper?
I mean, what?
The movie with Dennis Hopper, the Barry Seal story with Dennis Hopper.
Slightly better because it was more contemporaneous. It happened closer to the assassination. It was only like half a dozen years later. The true story of the assassination is the best story I tell in Barry and the Boys. Barry and the Boys available on Amazon and at madcowprod.com for the low price of $44.95. And I'm sorry if someone doesn't consider that a low price, but the thing about publishing is it's the worst business in the world. And Amazon's made it worse.
Yeah.
If you're an author whose books are selling on Amazon, you're making at most $2.95 a book, which isn't really exciting unless you're selling 50, 100,000 copies a book. So instead I sell it, I sell it off I sell it on Amazon. I am the publisher, and on a $45 sale, I make closer to what I should, which is $30.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I mean, so instead of selling 50,000 copies, all I have to do is sell, 5,000, and to have felt that I've been been paid for my efforts.
Can we look forward to any further Daniel Hopsicker books to come out?
Well, yeah. I mean, being diagnosed with a terminal disease does wonders as far as focusing your mind.
Right. That's so true.
And I've been working on what's coming out shortly, Gangster Planet, for years and years and years. And I'm just lazy. I wanted to wait until I knew the whole story before telling it. And, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and it's taken a long time to figure it out. But finally I did, and have it like nailed, and am about to tell you the story of the Florida-based alt-right Republican crime ring, which in conjunction with the Russian mob, and operating out of Sarasota, Florida, has just made enough money to make Donald J. Trump president. And Donald J. Trump would never have been president if someone else hadn't given them money, because Donald J. Trump really doesn't care about anything, except Donald J. Trump. And, he wouldn't pay to be president. When he became president, it was a big surprise to him, or supposedly. I have no problem believing that, because he's too cheap to have paid to make himself president. But the Russian mob would, and they did, along with the Republican Party, out of Sarasota County, Florida. Ta-da! And Sarasota County, Florida, recall, is where the 9/11 conspiracy lived in the year and a half before the 9/11 attack. 3 or 4 terrorist pilots learned to fly at tiny Venice, Florida airport, which I discovered. Well, I guess maybe that's the biggest discovery. I found that out 6 months after 9/11, because in one of those odd things in history, my parents retired in Venice, Florida, in the mid-1980s, 82, 83. And being a dutiful son, I would fly out to see him almost every winter from Los Angeles, where I was like, being hip and cool, and come to see my mom and dad, and never saw a cop in town. It looked like Mayberry, Andy and Mayberry. Looked worse than Andy and Mayberry. And then all of a sudden, this town of 10,000 people, you find out 3 days after 9/11, has hosted 3 of the 4 terrorist pilots in the 9/11 attack. And don't that just make your brown eyes blue?
Yeah, especially at that time. Especially at that time, these guys must have stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
You'd think.
So I hadn't seen a policeman in Venice, Florida, in any of my dozen visits over the years. And then all of a sudden, the first day I got here, I got pulled over twice. And the second time, I had composed myself enough to ask the cop, you think it might be a good idea if I checked in with the chief? And he allowed that might be a good idea. And so I did. And I'm so ever so glad I did, because when I checked in with the chief, the first thing he did when I walked into his office, before I even introduced myself, was he stood up at his desk and he put his hands out in front of him, okay, waving them back and forth. He said, "Don't blame us. We didn't have anything to do with it." Okay? True story. Don't blame us. We didn't have anything to do with it. He was a local cop. Anything that went on at the Venice, Florida airport was the purview of the federal government and the federal government only, and he had nothing to do with it. He said the Venice airport, the Venice Municipal Airport, 2 tiny runways, he said, had always been the kind of place where things would be dead quiet, in the middle of the night, dead quiet, and then all of a sudden a Black Hawk helicopter would swoop in, land, and take off again 30 seconds later.
So not even the pretense.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, not even a pretense of keeping this stuff secret.
Well, see, that's what happens when you visit certain parts of the country that are known for hosting the intelligence military complex, right? The military, what do they usually call it? The military
industrial complex.
Right. This is the intelligence industrial complex. This is where the spooks hang out.
Mm.
Right? They're not making machine guns. They're thinking up nifty conspiracies. I mean, it's home territory. In other words, okay? It's home territory. It's where you go. It's where you go to chill out between jobs. And I discovered that Sarasota, Florida, had been that chill out between jobs place since like the 40s. Used to hang out in Sarasota was E. Howard Hunt. And similar personages. He lived in Sarasota. So they ran ops out of Sarasota. And once again, I just gotten lucky.
Yeah.
I stumbled onto a place where my parents had retired, and so I knew drug smuggling activity, could not possibly be taking place there. And found out something different. So Sarasota, Florida is the Republican Mena, Arkansas. It's exactly the place where one political party controls everything up and down the line. They've got the director of elections. You need a director of elections? I got one for you. You need county sheriffs? I got them for you. You need the local newspaper. Sarasota was the home of the Sarasota Herald Times. Sarasota Herald, rather. owned by a family that had been involved in U.S. military involved drug trafficking since the 40s. Since the 40s. Do you know who? Okay, do a search on this guy's name and see if I'm not right. Claire Chennault led the Flying Tigers. Went to China in unofficial U.S. support of the government of Chiang Kai-shek, the nationalist premier of China, who financed. If you read it doesn't take 5 minutes to find out that Chiang Kai-shek funded his nationalist civil war with the communists by selling heroin in the U.S. You still with me, Ed?
I'm still with you, yeah. I'm 100% with you.
And as if that wasn't enough, right? As if that weren't enough, not only did they traffic heroin through Venice, Florida, Sarasota, Florida, and St. Petersburg, Florida, this is where they trained the pilots that flew the dope. They trained Flying Tigers at the Venice Municipal Airport, at the Sarasota Airport, and at the St. Petersburg Clearwater Airport in the 40s.
Yeah, all really tiny airports, yeah.
Yeah. Well, these are the guys that you've seen in a dozen frolicking movies. Those wonderful guys, the boys, right? Just a rollicking group that, if they had some sacks of cocaine back there, alongside the rice, was no big deal.
Right.
So there it is. This is the heart of the heart. I'm in Venice, Florida now. It's the heart of the country. You may have heard, if you've interviewed me before, you may have found out that the guy that owned the Venice, Florida, owned Huffman Aviation in Venice, Florida. That flight school with the blue awning that everybody saw after 9/11 because this weird-looking Dutch guy was standing out in front of it, explaining that he didn't like Atta, but the chubby one was okay.
Rudy Decker.
He was the official spokesman, and if you keep your eyes open, you can spot them after the bombing in Boston, Boston Marathon bombing. The guy whose job it was to explain to us that the half dozen Chechen terrorists that had set bombs off there, weren't who they said they were. That's how. And the guy that was telling you, that his cousins were just stupid, was a CIA agent.
Ruslan.
Was an AID officer in Pakistan.
Yeah, Ruslan
Sarni.
That's right. Yeah, I spotted that guy in 10 seconds. Yeah.
who worked for Graham Fuller.
Right, but how is he connected to Decker?
Bless his little pea-picking heart, Graham Fuller. So now you know who was running that op. Former high CIA mucky muck Graham Fuller, whose name was well known as well known as spooks like what was that guy after the Kennedy assassination? The counterintelligence guy.
Dulles.
No, Dulles ran the agency.
Okay.
He was the paranoid guy who always who saw Russian spies everywhere. You know what? His name escapes me at the moment.
Okay.
Which is okay. But he was well known. I mean, there are certain CIA agents that become well known during their lifetimes or shortly thereafter. And Graham Fuller has just joined that illustrious company because I've just outed him on nationwide radio, and I just hope they sue you first because you have assets that could be attached.
Yeah, now I do. Yeah. Yeah.
So there.
Speaking
Anyway,
of getting sued, go ahead.
Having said everything I've already said, I want to give, a solid 2.5 cheers to the U.S. of A. Okay. 3 cheers for America. They don't kill you here. I mean, how smart do they have to be to not kill you? Okay, they have to be pretty smart, and they are pretty smart.
They are pretty smart.
They're smarter than we are. Yeah, they're smarter than we are.
Daniel Hopsicker, let me ask you this then, okay? These youngsters, right nowadays, there's a lot of guys out there with YouTube channels and podcasts and stuff like that. They're trying to emulate the work of someone like Daniel Hopsicker. What kind of advice would you give to these kids, and what kind of warnings would you give to these kids?
What, now that you've been elected to the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Yeah. In your first speech, tell us a little about how you made it happen. It's funny, dude. I do not know.
You don't know?
I wouldn't. I would suggest that you somehow find yourself extremely lucky, okay, and somehow luck into something that's far bigger than you thought it might possibly even be, okay? When I went to profile Barry Seal in Louisiana, I had no idea that what he was doing both through Louisiana and also through Miami was the biggest thing going on. And I listened to guys. I listened to Barry's money man, a guy by the name of Blackie, explain to me how they would pay for the cocaine they were buying from the Medellin cartel. Okay, you're with the CIA, and you got to be there when the transaction happens. Well, I mean, who would want to be there then? So what they did was they bought 2 floors out of a brand new condominium high-rise in Miami Beach, and they cut out the floor of one of them, and they passed the drugs up on an elevator.
Wow.
So they never had to meet. So, 10 tons of cocaine would come down, and what you send up is a couple of duffel bags, filled with, whatever, $100 million or however much they were paying. You never had to meet, and so that's how they did it. Now, that's a pretty interesting story. I don't know that I could have thought of something that clever. So shout out to our boys in the CIA.
Very, very resourceful in supplying us drugs. Yeah, I had a fellow tell me once that to make sure you go out and meet as many people as you can, and that's how you become successful in life. You meet and become associate with as many people as you can, and you'll stumble on people with information or opportunities, Yeah.
Yes, you have to put out a friendly vibe.
Yeah.
And be willing to accept help from where it's offered, and be humble enough to know that you don't know everything. I guess.
Daniel Hopsicker, we've gone over time, and I told you, going into this, I had a live show tonight I got to do. What would you like to leave us with in this conversation? I'd like to have you back.
Enjoy every sandwich. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
That's what David Letterman had. The guy that did Lawyer, Guns, and Money.
Yeah.
Warren Zevon.
Yeah.
He had him on a dozen times to his show, and the last time Zevon was dying, and they both knew it, and he acknowledged it on the show, and David Letterman asked him, if he had any advice to pass on. Yeah, and he said, enjoy every sandwich. So there you go. Enjoy every sandwich. I don't think when you're given a terminal diagnosis, I don't believe that like insight rushes in. They may
Yeah.
slowly over time, but there it is. And I am having and have had a great time doing what I'm doing. And I hope I passed along a couple words of wisdom to your no doubt long-suffering audience.
Well, Daniel, I can tell you there's no doubt in my mind you've passed on many, many words of wisdom and great reporting and great work that not only I admire, but I know all the listeners admire for over these years. I was lucky in the beginning to get you. You weren't doing any interviews back in those days. And I just, bulled my way in there. Hey, come on the show, buddy. And I got you to come on.
Yes, I've always enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're one of a few. I mean, you're interested in the subject, all right?
Yeah.
And so you ask intelligent questions, and so I've always enjoyed hanging out with you.
Yeah, me too, man.
So call me again. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, I want to book something again soon. Daniel Hopsicker, once again, madcowprod.com. You can find him there. You can find him on Twitter at Daniel Hopsicker. Always has great content, putting up some new information about Zelensky and stuff about Trump, stuff about Manafort. What's this other one here? Out of the shadows into the light here. Steve, Bohemian Grove. Always great content with Daniel Hopsicker. I can't thank enough of the books. Again are Barry and the Boys and the Welcome to
Terrorland, and the new book you should buy, if you haven't already, Gangster Planet. Because isn't Gangster Planet just about the best title you ever heard?
It is, man. And we had John here, we did a whole show too titled Gangster Planet. Daniel Hopsicker, man, thank you so much.
Sure. Take care.
Good night, bro.